The Zarathian warship hung in Earth's orbit like a metallic predator waiting to strike. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge, his 4 arms crossed over his armored chest as he studied the blue planet below. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. And Earth would be no different. "Sir, the humans have sent another message," Lieutenant Krell reported, his tentacles dancing over the communication console. "They're warning us to leave their solar system." Vextar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. "Show me their military capabilities again." The holographic display flickered to life, showing grainy footage from human conflicts. Soldiers carrying primitive projectile weapons, tanks rolling across desert terrain, and aircraft dropping explosive ordnance. To the Zarathians, who had mastered energy shields and plasma weaponry centuries ago, it looked like watching children play with sticks. "They still use chemical propulsion for their bullets," Krell said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Metal slugs pushed by exploding powder. How quaint." "Our shields can deflect meteor impacts," another officer chimed in. "Their bullets would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain." Vextar nodded slowly. The Galactic Council had deemed Earth a Class 3 civilization, barely worth noticing. They had nuclear weapons, yes, but those were crude and easily intercepted. Their space program was laughable, confined mostly to their own planet's orbit. And their ground forces? Still using weapons that relied on kinetic energy rather than directed plasma or quantum disruption. "Send the usual ultimatum," Vextar ordered. "Surrender within 1 solar rotation or face the consequences. And prepare a ground force for the capital cities. I want this conquest completed before the next cycle." Below on Earth, the message was received with grim determination. In a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, General Patricia Hayes read the alien demands for the 5th time. Around her, the Joint Chiefs of Staff waited for her response. "They're underestimating us," she said finally. "They see our conventional weapons and assume that's all we have." "Ma'am, they're shields," Admiral Chen began. "I know about their shields," Hayes interrupted. "But they've made a critical error. They think we fight like they do, with flashy technology and brute force. They don't understand human warfare." She turned to a figure sitting quietly in the corner, a man whose file was so classified that half the people in the room didn't even know his real name. Marcus Ghost Thompson had been many things in his 52 years: Marine sniper, Delta Force operator, and now something that didn't officially exist. "Ghost, tell them about Project Phantom." The man stood slowly, his weathered face showing no emotion. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried absolute authority. "For the past decade, we've been developing weapons specifically designed to counter alien threats. Not lasers or plasma guns, but something far more effective. We studied every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on. Every crashed ship, every intercepted transmission. We learned their shields are designed to stop high-energy impacts, fast-moving objects, radiation, and directed energy." He paused, allowing the information to sink in. "But they have a weakness. The shields need to detect a threat to deflect it. They use sophisticated sensors that look for heat signatures, electromagnetic emissions, velocity calculations. So we built bullets that give off none of those things." General Hayes picked up the explanation. Project Phantom produced rounds made from a classified material that exists in a state of quantum flux. They don't register on any known sensors because, technically, they're not entirely in our dimension until the moment of impact. No heat signature, no electromagnetic footprint, moving at subsonic speeds to avoid velocity detection. "You're telling me we have magic bullets?" Admiral Chen asked skeptically. "Not magic," Ghost corrected. "Science. Very expensive, very limited science. We have exactly 1,000 rounds, and 1 man trained to use them effectively." Hayes looked around the room. "The aliens want a demonstration of Earth's military might. I say we give them one, but not the kind they're expecting." Above Earth, the Zarathian fleet waited with growing impatience. Vextar had conquered worlds that put up more resistance than this. The humans hadn't even launched their primitive rockets at them. Sir, detecting movement in several major cities, Krell reported. The humans appear to be evacuating their population centers. Running already? Vextar mused. Perhaps this will be even easier than anticipated. Deploy the ground forces. Start with their capital called Washington. I want to broadcast their leader's surrender across the planet. 300 Zorathian drop pods launched from the warship, each containing a squad of the Empire's finest soldiers. They punched through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their energy shields glowing bright against the friction. The pods landed in a perfect pattern around the evacuated city, disgorging armored warriors who stood 3 meters tall. Captain Th Roke led the primary assault force, his plasma rifle humming with deadly energy. His soldiers spread out in perfect formation, their shields shimmering in the morning sun. They moved through the empty streets, confused by the lack of resistance. "Where are the human soldiers?" one of his warriors asked. "Where are their bullets we're supposed to laugh at?" "Stay alert," the Throck commanded. This could be a trap. They were right, but not in the way they imagined. 1 mile away, Ghost lay prone on the roof of an abandoned office building. His rifle was unlike anything in standard military inventory. The barrel was wrapped in a material that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation. The scope used quantum entanglement for targeting rather than conventional optics. And loaded in the chamber was a bullet that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. Through his scope, he watched the alien forces move with casual arrogance. They didn't use cover, trusting their shields completely. They moved in predictable patterns, announcing their position with every heavy footfall. Ghost had seen this kind of overconfidence before in human enemies. It always led to the same outcome. He controlled his breathing, slowing his heartbeat to match the rhythm of the universe itself. The quantum scope showed him not where his target was, but where it would be when the bullet arrived. Time seemed to slow as he gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle made no sound. Not just a suppressed whisper, but true silence. The bullet left the barrel at just under the speed of sound, too slow to create a sonic crack. It traveled through the air, leaving no trace, no heat, no disturbance that any sensor could detect. Captain Throke was in the middle of ordering his troops forward when something impossible happened. His lieutenant, standing just 2 meters away, suddenly had a hole through his head. No energy blast, no explosion, no warning from the shields. One moment the warrior was there, the next he was falling. "What?" Throck began. Another soldier dropped. Then another. No sound, no visible projectiles, no sensor warnings. His troops began to panic, firing their plasma rifles wildly at empty buildings. Their shots lit up the morning sky but hit nothing but concrete and steel. "Form defensive positions," Throke screamed. "Shields to maximum." It didn't matter. Ghost's bullets passed through their shields as if they weren't there. 7 shots, 7 dead Zorathians. He changed position, moving to a pre-selected spot 3 buildings away. By the time he set up again, the aliens were in full retreat. On the warship, Vextar watched the chaos in stunned disbelief. His ground forces, the same soldiers who had conquered the Rigelian Confederacy, were running from an enemy they couldn't see or detect. "What's happening down there?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," Krell stammered. "Our soldiers are dying. No energy signatures, no projectile warnings. They just fall." "That's impossible. Our shields are intact, sir. Whatever is killing them passes through the shields without triggering them." Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: uncertainty. He had prepared for nuclear weapons, for desperate last stands, for every form of resistance known to the galaxy. But this silent, invisible death? This was something new. "Pull back the ground forces," he ordered reluctantly. "We need to reassess." In his bunker, General Hayes allowed herself a small smile as she watched the satellite feeds. Ghost had eliminated 13 targets and sent an entire invasion force into retreat. But this was just the beginning. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. "The aliens now know we have weapons they can't detect or defend against. They'll be cautious, paranoid. That's when we hit them with Phase 2. She turned to her staff. Contact our allies. It's time to show these Zorathians why humans have survived every predator we've ever faced. Not through superior technology, but through superior tactics. Ghost's voice crackled over the secure comm. Targets withdrawing to landing zones. Should I pursue? Negative, Hayes replied. Let them run. Let them report back to their commander. Fear is a weapon too, and we just gave them their first taste of it. On the streets of Washington, Zorathian blood pooled on American concrete. The bodies of the fallen warriors lay where they dropped, their advanced armor and shields useless against an enemy that understood the most fundamental rule of warfare. The best technology in the universe won't save you from an opponent who knows your weakness. As the drop pods lifted off, carrying the surviving Zorathians back to their ship, Ghost was already moving to his next position. 1,000 rounds might not seem like much against an alien armada, but he'd learned long ago that in the right hands, one bullet could change the course of a war. The real battle was just beginning, and humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their secret bullets or quantum technology. It was the fact that they had spent their entire evolution becoming the most creative killers in the known galaxy. The Zorathians had mocked Earth's primitive weapons. Now they would learn why humans had never needed anything more advanced. Sometimes, the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes a single sniper with the right tools could make an empire tremble. In the cold depths of space, Commander Vextar stared at the tactical display showing his retreating forces. For the first time in his career, he wondered if perhaps the Galactic Council had miscalculated. Maybe Earth wasn't a Class 3 civilization after all. Maybe they were something far more dangerous. A species that had perfected the art of war not through advanced technology, but through pure, ruthless efficiency. As reports continued to stream in about his fallen soldiers, all killed by something his sensors couldn't even detect, Vextar began to understand a terrifying truth. The humans hadn't shown their true capabilities because they hadn't needed to. They were holding back, using just enough force to send a message. And that message was clear. Earth would not be conquered. Not today. Not ever. The invasion of Earth had begun with Zorathian arrogance and human bullets they mocked. It would end with those same soldiers learning why, across the vast expanse of the galaxy, there was no species more dangerous than one backed into a corner with nothing left to lose. And humanity? They were just getting started. The Zorathian warship's command center had never been so quiet. Officers who normally boasted about their conquests now worked in tense silence, reviewing the footage from the failed ground assault for the 100th time. Still, they could find no explanation for their losses. Commander Vextar stood before the main viewing screen, his 4 hands clasped behind his back. The prideful warrior who had arrived at Earth just days ago was gone, replaced by a calculating strategist who finally understood he faced something unprecedented. "Show me the thermal readings again," he ordered. Lieutenant Krell manipulated the controls, bringing up the heat signatures from the battle. The display showed their soldiers' glowing forms moving through the city, their plasma weapons creating brief flares of intense heat. But their mysterious attacker? Nothing. Not even the faintest trace of body heat or weapon discharge. 14 of our finest warriors, Vextar said slowly. Dead. And we have no idea how. Perhaps we should request reinforcements from the fleet, another officer suggested carefully. Vextar's mandibles clicked sharply. And tell them what? That we cannot conquer a primitive world because they have invisible weapons? No. We will solve this puzzle ourselves. Meanwhile, in an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, humanity's real military command center buzzed with activity. General Hayes stood at the center of it all, coordinating a defense that would rewrite the rules of interstellar warfare. "Status report," she called out. "Ghost has relocated to New York," Colonel Martinez reported. "The aliens have deployed scanner drones over Washington, searching for any trace of our sniper. They won't find anything." "Excellent. And our other assets?" "Teams 2 through 5 are in position in London, Moscow, Beijing, and Tokyo. We're ready to demonstrate that Ghost isn't unique. Hayes nodded with satisfaction. The aliens had made the classic mistake of assuming humanity's strength lay in their visible military forces. They couldn't comprehend that Earth's deadliest warriors might be individuals with specialized equipment rather than massive armies. "What about the package from Australia?" she asked. Martinez smiled grimly. The Aboriginal elders were very helpful. Turns out their Dreamtime stories about walking unseen weren't just myths. Combined with our quantum rounds, we've created something special. On the Zorathian ship, a heated debate raged among the senior staff. Some advocated for orbital bombardment, turning Earth's cities to glass from the safety of space. Others argued for a massive ground invasion that would overwhelm any hidden snipers through sheer numbers. "You're all thinking like Zorathians," Science Officer Yilnex interjected. The elderly alien rarely spoke in military meetings, but when he did, even Vex-Tar listened. "These humans don't fight like us. Look at their history." He gestured to the holographic displays showing Earth's military conflicts. "They've spent thousands of years killing each other, not for glory or conquest like civilized species, but for resources, ideology, even their primitive religions. They've turned warfare into an art form." "Your point?" Vex-Tar asked. "My point is that we're fighting them on their terms. We landed where they expected, moved how they predicted, and died exactly as they planned. If we want to win, we need to think like humans." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Krell's tentacles flew over his console. "Sir, detecting launches from the planet's surface. Multiple missiles inbound. Raise shields. Point defense systems online," Vex-Tar commanded. The bridge crew watched as dozens of primitive rockets rose from Earth, their chemical engines leaving bright trails across the sky. The Zorathian point defense lasers activated, picking off missiles with casual ease. Within minutes, all threats were eliminated. "Pathetic," one officer scoffed. "Did they really think their ancient weapons could penetrate our defenses?" Yilnex frowned at his readings. "Strange. Those missiles. They weren't aimed properly. Their trajectories would have missed us even without interception. Perhaps their targeting systems are even more primitive than we thought," Krell suggested. But Vex-Tar had learned not to underestimate human actions. Or perhaps missing was the point. Scan the debris field. What they found chilled them. Each destroyed missile had released a cloud of microscopic particles, now spreading through orbital space around their ship. The particles were inert, showing no energy signatures or threatening properties. "It's like they're marking us," Yilnex said slowly. "But for what?" The answer came 12 hours later. In Earth's observatories, both public and military, telescopes that had once searched for distant galaxies now focused on a single target. The Zorathian warship, outlined by the reflective particle cloud, stood out like a beacon against the darkness of space. Confirming particle adhesion, a technician reported to General Hayes. "The alien shields don't recognize inert dust as a threat. Their entire hull is now coated." "Excellent. And Ghost's special delivery?" "The modified round is loaded. He's in position." 150 miles above Earth's surface, a modified weather balloon drifted silently through the thermosphere. Suspended beneath it was a custom-built firing platform, little more than a rifle barrel with precision stabilizers. It had taken Ghost 6 hours to climb to the balloon's launch altitude in a pressure suit, but the effort would be worth it. Through his helmet's display, he could see the Zorathian ship clearly, its hull sparkling with the microscopic markers. One shot. That's all he would get before the aliens detected the balloon and vaporized it. He loaded the special round, a bullet that had cost more to develop than most nations' entire defense budgets. Inside its quantum flux casing was a payload that would teach the Zorathians why humans had survived every extinction event their planet had thrown at them. The rifle fired in perfect silence, the round leaving Earth's atmosphere without a trace. It traveled through the void, invisible to every sensor the Zorathians possessed, guided by the particle markers to its target. On the bridge, Vex-Tar was reviewing invasion plans when something unprecedented happened. A small hole appeared in the hull behind him, barely the size of a Zorathian fingertip. No alarms sounded. The breach was too small for their systems to register as critical. Then the payload activated. The bullet contained no explosives, no plasma charges, nothing the shields would recognize as a weapon. Instead, it carried something far more insidious. A colony of genetically modified Earth bacteria, evolved to feed on the specific alloys used in Zorathian hull construction. Within seconds of exposure, they began to multiply exponentially. "Sir!" Krell shouted in alarm. "Hull integrity warnings across Deck 7. "What kind of warnings?" Vextar demanded. "The hull is deteriorating. It's being eaten away from the inside." Panic spread through the bridge as reports flooded in. What started as a tiny hole was spreading like a cancer through their ship's superstructure. Emergency force fields activated to contain atmospheric breaches, but the bacteria had already spread through the ventilation systems. "Initiate emergency protocols," Vextar ordered. "Seal all affected sections." But it was like trying to stop water with a net. The bacteria, designed by humans who had spent centuries perfecting biological warfare, adapted to each countermeasure. When the Zorathians raised the temperature to kill them, they evolved heat resistance. When they tried chemical purges, the bacteria fed on the chemicals. Within an hour, entire sections of the mighty warship were compromised. Vextar was forced to order evacuations as deck after deck became uninhabitable. "How?" he asked Yilnex desperately. "How did they deliver a biological weapon through our shields?" The science officer's expression was grim. "The same way they killed our ground forces. A projectile that doesn't register as a threat until it's too late. They've turned our own defenses against us." On Earth, General Hayes watched the satellite feeds with satisfaction. The Zorathian ship, once a symbol of inevitable conquest, now listed in orbit as its crew fought a losing battle against an invisible enemy. "Phase 2 complete," she announced. "They've lost approximately 30% of their ship's functionality in dropping." "Should we press the attack?" Colonel Martinez asked. "No, we've sent our message. Open a channel to their commander." Vextar's proud visage appeared on the screen, though Hayes could see the strain in his features. Behind him, his bridge showed signs of hasty repairs and emergency measures. "Commander Vextar," Hayes began formally. "I am General Patricia Hayes of Earth's United Defense Force. I believe it's time we discuss terms." "Terms." Vextar's mandibles clicked angrily. "You dare attack us with biological weapons and speak of terms?" "We've shown remarkable restraint," Hayes replied calmly. "We could have loaded those bullets with something far worse than hull-eating bacteria. Consider this a demonstration of capability, not intent." She leaned forward, her expression hardening. "You came here expecting to fight soldiers with outdated weapons. Instead, you're facing a species that has spent its entire existence perfecting the art of survival through conflict. We don't need plasma rifles or energy shields. We have something far more dangerous. The ability to turn any technology into a weapon." "You think you've won?" Vextar snarled. "We still have weapons that could crack your planet in half." "Yes, you could destroy Earth," Hayes acknowledged. "But at what cost? How many more invisible bullets would find their targets before you finished? How many more of your ships would suffer mysterious system failures? How many of your colonies would suddenly discover that humans had visited in secret, leaving behind gifts like the one currently eating your ship?" She let that sink in before continuing. "We don't want war, Commander, but we excel at it. Your choice. Leave our system peacefully, or discover just how creative humanity can be when threatened." The bridge fell silent, except for the distant sounds of emergency repairs. Vextar found himself in an impossible position. His forces outgunned the humans in every measurable way, yet they were losing to an enemy they couldn't see or predict. "Your weapons," he said finally. "The invisible projectiles. How many do you have?" Hayes smiled. "Enough. And we're making more every day. You see, Commander? You made a critical error. You judged us by our visible technology. But humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to innovate under pressure. In the time since your arrival, we've already improved the design. The next generation won't just bypass shields, they'll turn them against you. This was a lie, of course. They still had only a limited supply of the quantum rounds. But Vextar didn't know that, and the seed of doubt was worth more than any weapon. I need time to consider, Vextar said. You have 12 hours, Hayes replied. After that, we'll assume you've chosen war, and act accordingly. Oh, and Commander, you might want to check your other ships. The missiles we fired didn't just mark yours. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar to contemplate the impossible. 36 warships, each capable of devastating entire continents, held at bay by primitive humans with impossible weapons. As damage reports continued to stream in, he began to realize the true horror of their situation. It wasn't just that the humans had weapons that could bypass their defenses. It was that they had no idea what other surprises Earth might have prepared. Every advancement the Zorathians had made in energy shields and armor meant nothing against an enemy that simply ignored them. Every sensor upgrade was useless against weapons that existed partially outside normal space-time. Every tactical doctrine failed against opponents who fought without honor or predictable patterns. Sir, Krell reported quietly, the fleet is requesting updates. What should I tell them? Vextar looked at the tactical display, showing his damaged ship and the blue planet below that had become a death trap instead of an easy conquest. Tell them, he said slowly, that we may have encountered a Class 1 civilization after all, one that chose to hide its true capabilities until threatened. As his crew worked desperately to contain the spreading bacterial infection, Vextar found himself thinking about the human general's words. They excel at war, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through pure, ruthless innovation. The Galactic Council had classified civilizations based on their visible technology. But what if that entire system was flawed? What if true military might wasn't measured in plasma weapons and shield generators, but in the ability to render such things irrelevant? Ghost's weather balloon had long since been destroyed by Zorathian fighters, but he was already safe on the ground, preparing his next position. 846 rounds remained in humanity's arsenal, each one capable of changing the course of the invasion. But more importantly, the psychological damage was done. The Zorathians would spend the rest of their time in Earth's orbit jumping at shadows, wondering when the next invisible death would strike. They would scan empty air, desperately seeking an enemy that might not even be there. They would question every system failure, every unusual reading, every unexpected event. And that paranoia, Ghost knew from experience, was often more destructive than any bullet. The 12-hour deadline approached like a storm on the horizon. In the Zorathian fleet, emergency meetings had devolved into heated arguments as officers debated their next move. Some demanded immediate retreat, others called for total war, while a growing faction wondered if negotiation might be their only survival option. Commander Vextar stood alone in his private chamber, studying intelligence reports that made increasingly less sense. The bacterial infection had been contained through extreme measures. They'd jettisoned nearly a quarter of the ship's mass, but the psychological damage remained. Computer, he said quietly, display all anomalous events since our arrival. The list was staggering. Dead soldiers with no explanation. Invisible projectiles that ignored shields. Biological weapons delivered through impossible means. And now, reports from the other ships of minor system failures that could be coincidence or could be more human trickery. A soft chime indicated an incoming message, not from the fleet or Earth, but from an unexpected source, the Galactic Council itself. The hologram of Counselor Zeknaz materialized, her ancient features grave. Commander Vextar, we've been monitoring your situation. Counselor, Vextar straightened. I can explain. No need. We've seen the footage. Tell me, Commander, what is your assessment of humanity's threat level? Vextar hesitated. His entire career had been built on quick, decisive conquests. Admitting failure went against every instinct, but lying to the Council would be worse. They are not what they appear, he said finally. Their visible military is primitive. but they possess weapons and tactics we don't understand. They've killed our soldiers through methods our sensors can't detect. They've damaged my ship with biological agents delivered through shields. And I believe we've seen only a fraction of their capabilities. The counselor's expression didn't change. Interesting. Do you know why we classify civilizations, Commander? To assess threat levels and determine appropriate response protocols. Partially correct. But the real reason is to prevent catastrophic miscalculations. We've encountered species before who hide their true nature. Some out of fear, some out of wisdom. The question is, which are the humans? Before Vex Tar could respond, alarms began blaring again. But this time, it wasn't his ship under attack. Sir, Krell's panicked voice came through the comm. The Bloodclaw is reporting massive system failures. Their entire navigation array just went dark. And the Starbane reports their life support is malfunctioning. Another voice added. No cause detected. Vextar felt his blood chill. All ships? Simultaneously? Not all, Krell corrected. But 17 vessels are reporting various problems. It's like... He paused, struggling to find words. It's like the ships themselves are betraying us. In her command center, General Hayes watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. The quantum bullets were just the beginning. Humanity's real weapon was psychological warfare, refined over millennia of conflict. Status of Operation Gaslight? She asked. Fully operational, Colonel Martinez reported. We've been broadcasting subliminal electromagnetic pulses for the past 6 hours. Nothing their conscious minds would detect. But their equipment is starting to respond to phantom signals. It was brilliantly simple. The Zorathian ships were marvels of engineering, but they relied on countless automated systems. By introducing specific electromagnetic patterns into the background noise of Earth's magnetosphere, human scientists had essentially given those systems the equivalent of anxiety. Sensors started seeing threats that weren't there. Navigation computers second-guessed themselves. Life support systems overreacted to minor fluctuations. None of it was directly harmful, but for a fleet already on edge from invisible snipers and hull-eating bacteria, it was devastating. And Ghost? Hayes asked. In position for the finale. Though I still think this is risky. Hayes nodded. What they were about to attempt would either end the invasion or trigger a massacre. But sometimes, the boldest moves were the safest. High above the Pacific Ocean, Ghost sat in the open door of a stealth helicopter, his rifle across his lap. This time, he wasn't aiming at Zorathians. His target was something far more ambitious. Remember, the pilot's voice crackled through his headset. You get one pass. Make it count. Ghost didn't reply. His entire focus was on the rifle's modified scope, which showed him not the physical world but probability fields. The quantum bullets didn't just bypass shields. Properly utilized, they could influence quantum events. The helicopter swept low over the ocean as Ghost lined up his shot. Not at any ship or soldier, but at a specific point in space where probability streams converged. A place where, according to the physicists, a single quantum event could cascade into something larger. He fired. The bullet disappeared into the night, leaving no trace. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, across the entire Zorathian fleet, every quantum processor simultaneously experienced what could only be described as doubt. These processors were the hearts of Zorathian technology, making millions of calculations per second to maintain everything from shields to life support. They operated on quantum principles, existing in multiple states until forced to resolve into specific outcomes. The bullet's quantum field didn't damage them. Instead, it introduced uncertainty into their calculations. Where once they computed with perfect precision, now they hesitated for nanoseconds. Where once they resolved into single answers, now they fluctuated between possibilities. To organic minds, the effect was negligible, but to systems requiring precise quantum states, it was catastrophic. Commander, Krell shouted as his console erupted in error messages. Fleet-wide system failures. Shields are fluctuating, weapons are offline. Even our communication array is compromised. Vextar watched his mighty fleet, the pride of the Zarathian Empire, reduced to drifting hulks by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. His warriors, trained to fight honorable battles against visible foes, were helpless against an opponent that turned their own technology against them. "Enough," he said quietly. "Sir? I said enough," Vextar roared. "Signal the fleet. We're withdrawing." "But Commander, would you prefer we wait until these humans decide to stop toying with us, until they deliver a weapon that does more than inconvenience us?" Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "We came here expecting to fight primitives with projectile weapons. Instead, we're facing something else entirely." He opened a channel to Earth. General Hayes appeared on the screen, her expression carefully neutral. "General," Vextar said formally, "I am prepared to discuss terms." "I'm listening." "The Zarathian Empire will withdraw from Earth's system immediately. We will recommend to the Galactic Council that Earth's classification be updated to reflect your true capabilities. In exchange, yes, you will share the technology behind your weapons." Hayes laughed, a sound that sent chills through the Zarathian bridge crew. "Commander, you still don't understand. There is no single technology. What we used against you was a combination of quantum physics, biological engineering, psychological warfare, and dozens of other disciplines woven together by minds that have spent centuries perfecting the art of war." She leaned forward. "We could give you the blueprints for our quantum bullets, and you still couldn't replicate them. Because the real weapon isn't the bullet, it's the mindset that created it. The willingness to look at any problem from angles no sane species would consider. Then what do you want? Simple. Leave Earth alone. Spread the word that we're not worth the trouble. And Commander?" Hayes's smile turned predatory. "If any other species decides to test us, remind them that we showed you mercy. We disabled your fleet without killing a single Zarathian after the initial demonstration. Next time, we might not be so gentle." Vextar stared at her for a long moment. "You planned this. All of it. You wanted us to invade." "We've been preparing for first contact for decades," Hayes admitted. "We knew that eventually, someone would see our radio signals and come calling. We also knew they'd likely be hostile, given the nature of expansion-minded species. So we prepared weapons specifically designed to counter advanced civilizations while appearing primitive ourselves. A trap, a test. One you failed the moment you underestimated us based on appearances." The communication ended, leaving Vextar to contemplate the magnitude of their defeat. As his fleet limped away from Earth, drives struggling with quantum uncertainty and hulls patched against bacterial infection, he found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about warfare. The Galactic Council's classification system measured civilizations by their visible technology. Type 1 controlled their planet, Type 2 their star, Type 3 their galaxy. But humans had demonstrated something outside that framework entirely. They were still technically Type 1, unable to harness their sun's full power or travel between stars. But they had weaponized creativity itself, turning their limitations into advantages. They couldn't match Zarathian shields, so they made weapons that ignored them. They couldn't match Zarathian firepower, so they attacked the mind instead of the body. "Sir," Yilnex approached carefully, "the Council is requesting a full report. Tell them," Vextar said slowly, "that Earth should be classified as Type X, technologically primitive, but tactically advanced beyond measure. Any species that attempts conquest will find themselves fighting an enemy that has spent its entire evolution preparing for that exact scenario." As the Zarathian fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Earth's defenders finally allowed themselves to relax. In secure facilities around the world, the real truth was carefully hidden. The quantum bullets were real but limited. The bacterial weapon had been a lucky accident. The electromagnetic interference was more annoyance than threat. But the aliens didn't know that. And that uncertainty was worth more than any weapon. General Hayes stood before the world's leaders, delivering her after-action report. "We had less than 1,000 rounds of ammunition that could bypass their shields. she admitted. The bacterial agent was specifically designed for their hull composition and won't work on other alloys. The quantum processor disruption was a one-time trick that they'll probably defend against in the future. Then how did we win? The president asked. By making them think we had more, by attacking their confidence instead of their ships, by showing them that every advantage they had could become a weakness. Hayes smiled. Humanity's greatest military victories have never been about superior firepower. They've been about superior thinking. And if they come back, then we'll have to get creative again, but I don't think they will. The report Vextar files will spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. Earth will become known as the planet where advanced technology means nothing, where invisible snipers can kill through any defense, where ships themselves turn against their crews. She paused, looking at each leader in turn. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the most advanced. But we might just be the most dangerous, because we're the only ones who've turned weakness into an art form. In the weeks that followed, Earth's long-range sensors detected numerous alien vessels approaching the solar system, only to turn away at the last moment. Word had spread through the galactic community. Earth was protected by weapons that defied understanding and humans who defied prediction. Ghost returned to his anonymous existence, the hero of a war that would never be publicly acknowledged. The quantum bullets were carefully stored, waiting for the next time someone decided to test humanity's resolve. Research continued on new weapons, each more creatively devastating than the last. But the real victory wasn't in the weapons or the tactics. It was in the message sent across the stars. Humanity was not prey. They were not subjects to be conquered. They were the species that had clawed their way to the top of their world's food chain through cunning and adaptability. And now, the galaxy knew it too. Commander Vextar's final report to the Galactic Council would become required reading at military academies across known space. In it, he wrote, "The humans possess no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel. By every metric we use to judge military might, they should have fallen in hours. Instead, they defeated a fleet of 37 warships using weapons we still don't fully understand, tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, and a psychological understanding that turned our own strengths against us. They call themselves Homo sapiens, wise man, in their ancient language. The galaxy would do well to remember that wisdom and intelligence are not the same thing. The humans may not be the smartest species we've encountered, but they are almost certainly the most cunning. Recommend immediate reclassification to protected status. Further contact should be attempted only through diplomatic channels, with full understanding that this species has likely prepared for every contingency we might imagine and several we cannot." Final note, the humans have a saying, "If you want peace, prepare for war." After witnessing their capabilities, I believe they have been preparing for this war since before they discovered fire. The galaxy's continued peace may depend on leaving them to their small blue world. Let sleeping predators lie. The report was accepted unanimously. Earth's classification was updated, not to Type 1 or Type 2, but to a new category created specifically for them, Type Apex. A species that had maximized their potential within their current technological limitations to such a degree that advancement was almost irrelevant. And in the depths of space, other civilizations took note. The humans were not to be trifled with. Not because they were strong, but because they had turned weakness into the ultimate weapon. The war for Earth had lasted less than a week, but its implications would echo through the galaxy for millennia to come. The age of easy conquests was over. The age of caution had begun. All because one human sniper had made the impossible look easy, and an entire species had backed his play with the kind of coordinated deception that only a race of natural-born killers could conceive. The Zarathians had mocked Earth's bullets. They would never make that mistake again. Neither would anyone else.